Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I've just discovered that I've become extremely regulated, amazingly regulated. I start class 5 minutes late every day. Is that what Krishna speaks about, being regulated? You're always late 5 minutes? Yeah. If that's what he's talking about, I'm regulated, yeah, somehow or other. I've got my internal clock set 5 minutes late, always something getting in the way. No matter what I do, when I get up, I always have so much to do that I crunch it down. But anyway, you're all used to that. So we're going to continue Chaitanya Leela, as we were reading before, and have some interesting discussions. We always try to relate these discussions to what's going on in our lives, what's going on in the world, what is on our minds. So although the Leelas may talk about many things, we try to make them relevant and the discussions relevant, primarily just to keep you awake. Or to keep you from not looking at other social media and doing other things while you're listening to the lecture. No, primarily so that you can apply. It's not just theory. You can understand how it applies. So we will do kirtan, and then we will have class. Gauranga Nityananda Sri Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Just give me one moment to find my harmonium. There it is. I found my harmonium. I have to find my drums. We have found them. They are now found. Set the right tempo. Find our orchestra. Orchestra has been found. So we're good. Find our temple hall. Krishna. We're ready to go. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodhanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodhanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Shodhanandana Vajjana Ranjana Shodhanandana Vajjana Ranjana Jamunatira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Vijanamallabha Giridhara Dhari Vijanabhava Giridhara Dhari Sudhanandana Rajajanaranjana Sudhanandana Rajajanaranjana Sudhanandana Rajajanaranjana Sudhanandana Rajajanaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare One more time. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Sham Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschati Dasatani Hare Krishna. Seems like we need to be louder. Gauranga Nitananda. Yeah, here we go. Gauranga Nityananda. Loud enough? Gauranga, Nityananda. Never loud enough. Always loud. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Welcome to all of you. Now, today, we will test my bookmarking abilities and see if my bookmarking actually worked. We never know. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go to Veda-based bookmarking school. Okay, we're going to try bookmark 1. Go. It worked. Round of applause, everyone. I'm not as dumb as I thought I was. You ever feel like that, you know? Feel like you're not that smart, and then you do something, and you think, oh, I'm not as dumb as I thought. Especially for my generation with computers, yeah. Of course, we're going to start reading, and you're all going to say, no, that's not where we left off. Then I'll think, yeah, I am as dumb as I thought. Okay. I think it's a sign of Kali Yuga that intelligence is less, right? So the smartest thing we ever did was chant Hare Krishna. That means you're not stupid if you chant Hare Krishna. If you don't chant Hare Krishna, it means less intelligent. Okay, so we're reading from a sentence that begins, the Puranas are also supplementary to the Vedas, I believe. Of course, someone's going to say, that's not where we left off. So let's see what you all have, what my trusted editors say where we left off. They're not saying. Maybe they forgot. Okay, we're going to read here from this introduction to the Bhagavatam life sketch of Lord Chaitanya. The Puranas are also supplementary to the Vedas. The Vedic mantras are too difficult for an ordinary man. Women, Sudras, and the so-called twice-born higher caste are unable to penetrate into the sense of the Vedas. I think we read that. And thus the Mahabharata as well as the Puranas are made easy to explain the truths of the Vedas. In his prayers before the boy, Sri Krishna, Brahma said that there is no limit to the fortune of the residents of Brajabhumi, headed by Sri Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai, because the eternal absolute truth has become their intimate relative. Yes. The Vedic mantras are difficult, so they're Puranas, but the Puranas are also difficult. So Prabhupada said, without my purports, you wouldn't really understand. Some devotees were saying that the highest evidence is Shastra, and that the evidence of the Guru, the evidence of the sadhus is second, and the evidence of the Guru is third. But Prabhupada said, without my purports, you wouldn't understand the evidence. So you could say maybe, in a sense, the highest evidence is Scripture. But if you can't understand the Scripture, without the Guru, then the Guru becomes the highest evidence for you. Plus, the Scriptures are not meant to be understood directly. They're meant to be understood by the Guru. And one of the most interesting things that I find in connection, in this connection of explanation, is that sometimes an acharya will write a book, and then he'll write a commentary on his own book. So, and Prabhupada said that we, at least when he said this, it was in 1972, you can't understand my spiritual master's books. You understand through me. So it seems that relevancy and adaptability to the culture, the situation, level of intelligence, level of education of people is always necessary, and therefore The acharyas are always writing commentaries. You think, well, why would I need to write a commentary? Prabhupada already wrote the commentary. Now there's a discussion that some things that Prabhupada has written can be misunderstood. And therefore, some of these things we need to explain because not everybody will understand. Or another way of saying that most people will misunderstand. Because according to our culture, our social political situation, our religion, our education, certain things that Prabhupada says seem to mean something that they may not exactly mean or may not mean at all. So they need to be explained. What to speak of 500 years from now when words had different meanings. I was once discussing this, and a devotee said something, made a comment about this topic, and I said, "Your comment was awful." And the discussion was about the use of words and how, Shakespearean English is, as most of us would understand a lot of it. I've never read Shakespeare in English. Maybe I did in school and I forgot. Or maybe they made it modern English. But a lot of those old English words are non-existent. So I told him, and he made that commentary, like we have to, adjust. We may have to adjust words. We may have to re-edit some words because they no longer mean what they mean. And I said, Prabhu, your comment was totally awful. And then I explained that in English the word awful means horrible. But it's not actually what it means. It actually means full of awe, awful, like awesome. Oh, that was an awesome comment. If I tell you that was an awful comment, it actually means it was an awesome comment. But the way words are used, I don't know if you know this, I'm not an English major, but I think it's kind of common sense. The way words are defined are based on how they're used, not what they meant when they were created or how they were used hundreds of years ago. It's based on how they're used now. So the word awful now means bad. I don't know how it came to that. I haven't studied it. But the word full of awe has come to mean awe, like ooh. It's awful, awful, ah. Or maybe awful means cute, ah. Anyway, languages are interesting, especially Western languages, which are a combination of, especially English, which is a combination of many languages. So, the original point I made was the Puranas are supplementary to the Vedas, and they were meant for people like ourselves who are not so smart, not born in Vedic culture, not raised as Brahmins, didn't go through all the samskaras. And so it's meant for us. Easy reading. But then you get into the Puranas and you find, well, it's not easy reading unless you have commentary of Guru. So all our Shastras are meant to go, Gurus are meant to go with the Shastra to explain it. And Purana means old. It means stories. And some Puranas are sattvic, some are rajasic, and some are tamasic, or geared. The Shastra itself is tamasic. It's geared towards tamasic people. And the sattvic Puranas are Krishna Lila oriented. So we'll continue reading. Or maybe after I make such profound statements like I did, like we're all stupid, and similar things, I should go back and see what you all think about what I just said. How dare you call me stupid? No, I didn't call you stupid. Bhagavatam called you stupid. Well, they didn't call you stupid. Bhagavatam was polite. It called us less intelligent. That's what the Bhagavatam says. So I'm just repeating, I'm innocent. You've offended everyone. You call us stupid. No, I'm just repeating. Like sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say, call people rascals. These people that say this, they're rascals. And people would say, how can you call them rascals? That's not nice. That's not polite. And Prabhupada said, I'm not calling them rascal. Krishna is. I'm just repeating what he says. Namam mudha namam duskritina mudha. Prapadyante naradama. These are the people that don't surrender to me. And they're called mudhas. You know, well, mudha means ass. It means donkey. So, I didn't call these people asses. Krishna called them. You got a problem? Talk to him. That's what he said. So, you know, I didn't call you less intelligent. Bhagavatam did. Of course, by becoming a devotee, hearing from Prabhupada, we become the most intelligent, Brahmana. So Prabhupada's taking people without a brain, giving them a brain, just like when that whole controversy came up about brainwashing. And Prabhupada's like, you know, that would be a good argument if they had a brain to wash, but since they don't have one, I don't think it's a good argument. First get a brain, then we'll wash it. And brain means to understand, the Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Yeah, so at least, you know, if you understand you're not the body, then we can talk. Then we can say, okay, your brain's working, more or less. So, yes, rascal. Mudha actually means ass. Bhagavatam is, you know, it's not so politically correct. It calls people hogs, dogs, camels, and asses. That's not nice. You're like in English, you know, you in English you say, if you say something that's true that nobody wants to say, then you say, just saying, you know, kind of like, of course this is true. You know, nobody was going to say it, so I'll say it. Like the story, the king had no clothes. Hey, the king has no clothes. Just saying, like, because nobody wants to say it, right? So Bhagavatam is saying, well, you know, why are you like a camel? Because camels chew on thorns and they eat their blood. And when you have sex, you're losing blood. So people who have irregulated sex, extraneous, they're like camels. Hogs eat anything. People eat anything. Dogs bark at anything. We fight over little things. And asses, we work hard like asses. Everyone will admit that. Everyone's working hard. So that's why it says that. What to do. The tradition, interesting, for those of you who are not Indian, this, I don't know if you know this, maybe you do, or it's hard to maybe appreciate it. But the tradition of sadhus is that generally they speak heavily, because it's like their words are like knives. And so the idea is we have this disease called materialism, so the sadhu has to come with sharp words and like cut the disease out. So I've seen this in India. Like Indians expect that the sadhu is going to be heavy. You're working like asses just to get a few pieces of toast. You're forgetting your life. And they're all like, thank you, Swamiji, for telling us that. We needed to hear that. You do that in America, you know, you'd be a court case the next day. But the Indians are like, thank you, Swamiji. You are so right. We needed to hear that. We're so engrossed in our families and money, and we're forgetting our spiritual life. Thank you for telling us. It's like they expect it. They love it. And the Americans, you know, the Westerners are going to sue you if you say that. But that's the tradition of Shastra. It's like, smash, smash, cut, rascal, fools, dogs, hogs, camels, and asses, wasting your life, sleeping at night, working during the day like ass. That's the language it uses. It's kind of like, hello. You ever try to wake up someone that's really, really tired, like deep sleeper, and the only thing that happens is like for a tenth of a second they stop snoring and kind of move, but they never get up. It's a big guy, like 300 pounds. You're trying to wake him up, and then you just like jump up and land on him, sit down on him, and he finally wakes up. So the Shastra is something like that. It's like we're hard to wake up, so it's not like bam, bam, bam. We just stay asleep. So that's the tradition. So sometimes Prabhupada would preach that way. And when questioned, why are you preaching that way? It's not really, it doesn't seem like so sadhu-like. And he said, well, I'm just repeating what Krishna says. Now, this doesn't mean we have a license to go out and tell everybody whatever we want to tell them just to wake them up. And what's the use of telling the truth if people take you to court and sue you? And we saw that on Sankirtan. We used to distribute books. And we thought, well, somehow or other, just get them to take a book, no matter what. And we generally found that when there was a nice exchange, people appreciated the devotee. The devotee was very kind and just a gentleman, a gentlewoman. People were more inclined to read the book. And if the exchange was a little caustic, a little rough around the edges, and people kind of felt pushed and forced, generally they didn't want to read the book because the book represented the bad experience. So I think that's common sense. Of course, we didn't have a lot of common sense when we were young devotees. As long as they got the book, we were happy. So Prabhupada said, if you speak the truth but people don't listen to it, you don't get any prize for that. But at the same time, Prabhupada didn't want us to compromise. So there's a story. So, it's a balance. Prabhupada liked bold preaching, but not that we turn everybody against us. But one time, there was this hugely popular organization in India. I won't mention the name to protect the innocent. And they're Paka Mayavadis. Like they're just like turning all, especially Bengal, into Mayavadis left and right. You're God, I'm God. Our Guru is God. He's come to tell you. So, just one devotee, somehow or other, she ended up in one of their meetings, and she just stood up and said, this is all nonsense, bogus. God's a person, Krishna's a person. Why are you trying to make him impersonal like that? Prabhupada heard about it, and he was like, go, girl. he wasn't like, he didn't say, why did you do that? That was so bad. That was so impolite. He said, fantastic. So he liked that. So I'm saying it's not a license that we can just go around and criticize people. But there is this tradition, the sadhu tradition, that they speak, there's like cut, 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 cut. Even though they themselves are very soft and very kind and compassionate, but sometimes it's like a parent. Sometimes a parent has to be a little strong to get the message across. So Bhagavatam calls us less intelligent. Okay, take it, Bhagavatam says we're like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. So how do we take it? Don't be like a dog, hog, camel, and ass. Don't be less intelligent. That's how we take it. So if it has that effect on you, that's good. Oh, did you see that thing I posted on Facebook where this devotee, he gave up his service? His name was Krishnadas. He was like temple president, I think Sweden or somewhere, and he just left it all. Prabhupada was so upset. And he said, you're not Krishnadas, you're Maya Das. Wow. Everyone in the room was like, where's the door? Prabhupada was so angry. So sometimes Prabhupada wants to get a message. He gets the message across. And sometimes, I know you must have this experience also. Sometimes, if the message comes nicely packaged, sometimes you never get it. But if it comes in a bitter pill, sometimes it's the only way you get it. So sometimes the sadhu was like that. Prabhupada was not like that very much. I think Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was more like that. And he was preaching a lot, his mission, sannyasis and brahmacharis, so very strict with them. Anyway, Prabhupada said, I am 90% lenient. My guru was 90% tolerant. My guru was 90% strict. I'm 90% lenient. Prabhupada was very, very tolerant. And usually not that heavy. And a lot of times when he was heavy, he was also funny about it, like making jokes about it. But still, these things are there. So, yes, we need to be shaken up. Maya, we need to shake you up with Krishna Shakti. Guru means heavy, yeah. Also means one who dispels darkness. Hare Krishna, Reshma. Are you playing hooky from work? She's got her headphones on and she's got a burqa over her head so they don't see it. And she's listening to class and she's pretending to work, right? That's a real devotee, if I've ever seen one. Okay, let's read some more. I think we read this. No. The Vedic mantra maintains that the absolute truth has no legs and no hands, and yet goes faster than all and accepts everything that is offered to him in devotion. The latter statements definitely suggest the personal feature of the Lord, although his hands and legs are distinguished from mundane hands and legs or other senses. So what we're reading now, if you remember, it's a discussion with the Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And these are what we just read. I should mention the quotations. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking. So he's explaining to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who's an impersonalist, if it says that he has no hands and no legs, or sometimes it says his hands and legs are everywhere. When it says he has no hands and no legs, it means he doesn't have hands like us, and he doesn't have legs like us. That's what it means. He doesn't have material hands and legs. So you might say, well, why don't they just say it that way? Good question. But that's the way they say it. But it's not a problem when you have a guru who explains it. No hands, no legs means no material hands and no material legs. He's not like us, not limited, doesn't have a physical form. He can see everywhere. He can accept anything from anywhere. He can give you millions of things with his two hands. He can take away millions of things with his two hands. So Lord Chaitanya is explaining this. So I'll just mention, if it's a quotation, the next, every 6, I'm just counting the paragraphs. Yeah, there's like all this is quotations. When it's no longer a quotation, I'll tell you. This is all Lord Chaitanya. This is what he's telling. This is what he's telling Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Isn't it interesting? God incarnates himself and becomes and takes the role of a great philosopher. And as I said a few days ago, it seems to me Lord Chaitanya is relishing defeating Mayavad philosophy for the benefit of the world and benefit of Sarvabhauma. Brahman, therefore, is never impersonal. But when such mantras are indirectly interpreted, it is wrongly thought that the absolute truth is impersonal. The absolute truth, personality of Godhead, is full of all opulences, and therefore he has a transcendental form of full existence, knowledge, and bliss. How then can one establish that the absolute truth is impersonal? Well, I'll tell you how. That's really easy. You know how? You want to be God? Hmm. Okay, sounds good. Oh, well, here you go. Here's the philosophy. You already are God. Really? I didn't know that. Now you know it. Cool. What do I do now? Just do your Leela. You're God. I'm God. You're God. You are me. I am you. We are all one together. I think that's a verse from the Beatles. The Walrus, isn't it? Marco will tell us the song. He must know. I am you, you are me, and we are all one together. Something like that. I am you, and you are me. Yeah, that kind of stuff was like floating around everywhere in the hippie days. And it's still floating around in the yoga studios. Now, when we discuss it, it doesn't make sense. But to the ego, ego loves this kind of stuff. Like servant, surrender. Ego's like, let me think about it. I don't know. It's not actually why I came to the material world. It wasn't to serve or surrender. Yeah, but you're surrendered to Maya. You're serving material nature. Yeah, but just give me some time. I'll get it together. That's material consciousness. So when we come along and say, you can be spiritual, but you don't have to surrender and you don't have to serve. You can actually be Him. You actually are Him and you forgot. And so, now you're talking my language. Isn't it? Well, that sounds good to me. Why does it sound good? Well, that's the reason I came here. And I really haven't been able to figure out how to do it. And now you come along and tell me the problem with trying to do it is you don't have to because you already are. Just be who you are and you are God. Wow. And then Prabhupada would say, if you're God, how could you not be God and then become God? And they say, it's my Leela. It's God's Leela. He forgets. All right. Does that make sense? Like God purposely forgets so He could suffer? Or God, who's controlling everything, decides He wants to suffer? And if you're God, how could you forget? Because by definition, God knows everything. So it's got a few holes in that philosophy for sure. Okay. Like a few 100,000 holes. Brahman, being full of opulences, is understood to have manifold energies, and all these energies are classified under 3 headings, under the authority of Vishnu Purana 6.7.61, which says that the transcendental energies of Lord Vishnu are primarily 3. His spiritual energy and the energy of the living entities are classified as superior energy, whereas the material energy is an inferior one, which is sprouted out of ignorance. So, why is Prabhupada saying this? Because he's making a distinction between Krishna and us. We are Jiva Tattva. You say, but isn't the spiritual energy that Prabhupada's describing here, isn't that us? Nope, not you. It's the spiritual energy which manifests the spiritual world and the eternal associates of Krishna, His internal potency. We are marginal potency, we're not internal potency. Jiva Tattva is marginal. And then you have external, which is the material energy. So there are 3 energies. So to think that you're God means you don't understand the basis of spiritual philosophy. Because you are an energy which is distinct from the Swarup Shakti, and you can't become that internal energy. You are eternally Jiva Tattva, marginal, Tatastha, called Tatastha Shakti. So you and I are eternally Tatastha Shakti, which is great because as Tatastha, you can have a relationship with Krishna, which is way better than trying to imitate Him, believe me. It's really hard to imitate Him. Really hard. the energy of the living entities is technically called Kshetragya energy. This Kshetragya Shakti, although equal in quality with the Lord, becomes overpowered by material energy out of ignorance and thus suffers all sorts of material misery. So the internal potency cannot be overwhelmed, overcome, influenced by material energy. The Jiva Tattva means truth, or some say essence. The essence of the Jiva, the Tattva of the Jiva, the fact, Tattva means fact. I want the Tattva, nothing but the Tattva. I want the facts, nothing but the facts. So, Jiva Tattva is Tatashta. Its classification is Tatastha, which means it's in between the material and the spiritual, which means it can go this side, you can go that side. As you know, we've all gone this side, which is why we have material bodies. If we would have chosen that side, we wouldn't be sitting in this class discussing this. We would be living it with Krishna, but we went this side. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. This is proof that we are Tatastha. We can be overwhelmed by Maya, which we have experience of. Obviously, we have experience of that. So even though Krishna describes the jiva as a superior energy over Maya, it's only superior in the sense that it has free will. But when it doesn't use its free will, then the material energy controls it. When it uses its free will properly, it is able to dominate material energy. And even though as humans we're so intelligent, we make spaceships that go everywhere and iPhones and this and that, we're still dominated by material energy. It's controlling us, controlling our consciousness. But the eternal associates of Krishna, sometimes they come down to this world. They can't be affected by it. They're not Tatashta. Shakti Tattva. They're the internal potency of Krishna. When Krishna descends in his Leelas, when Mahaprabhu descends in his Leela, then these eternal associates come down with him. They're never affected by the material energy. And that's why they do amazing things that ordinary people don't do. So, in other words, the living entities are located in the marginal energy between the superior spiritual and inferior material energies, and in proportion to the living being's contact with either the material or spiritual energies, the living entity is situated in proportionately higher and lower levels of existence. How much Maya, how much we're controlled will determine our actions, which will determine our karma, which determines our next birth, our consciousness, our next birth. The Lord is beyond the inferior. Again, this is Lord Chaitanya speaking, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The Lord is beyond the inferior and marginal energies, as above mentioned. And his spiritual energy is manifested in three different phases as eternal existence, eternal bliss, and eternal knowledge. This is Prabhupada, of course, paraphrasing what Lord Chaitanya said. As far as eternal existence is concerned, it is conducted by the Sandini potency. Similarly, bliss and knowledge are conducted by Ladini and Sambit potency. So just like in the material world you have three gunas, so you also have, you could say, three gunas, not really gunas as we understand, not ropes, but three natures, which is the eternal, the knowledge, and the bliss potency, Satchidananda, as energies of the spiritual world, Sandini, called Sandini, Ladini, and Sambit. So imagine for a moment, if you can, well, let's first do a little visualization or remembrance of what it's like in the material world. Of course, we don't have to remember because we're in it. But in the material world, if you, as the Beatles said, relax, turn off your mind and float downstream, which to me is kind of like just let the modes take over, basically. Basically the mode of ignorance, because that song, obviously was induced by some toxic substances. So if you just relax, turn off your mind, and float downstream, the downstream is the modes of nature. They just control us, right? And so when you have your guard down, the modes start acting, and they start drawing our consciousness and our senses into the sense objects, things we want to enjoy that will make us happy. That's just how it works. If you have your guard down, that's just what happens. Then you just kind of get pulled around by your karma, by your consciousness, by your desire, according to your particular set of modes of what's attractive to you, and you just basically get beaten up by material energy. As Krishna says, dvesha, which is hatred, attraction and repulsion, are felt by embodied beings, and one should not fall under the control of attraction and repulsion. So basically what Krishna is saying is that's the way it works here. You like something, you don't like something, and then the senses are either drawn towards it or pushed away from it because they don't like it. Well, of course, you could say sometimes neutral, they don't care one way or the other. But generally, our senses are drawn towards or away from something. Ooh, look at that. You ever done that? You ever done this? Wow. Yeah, so that's basically material life. That's what we're doing all the time. So, and we're being pulled, manipulated like that. Now, imagine we've gone to the spiritual world. There are no modes of material nature. So if you turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream, what happens there? Sandini, Ladini, and Sambit. That's what happens. That's the energies that work there. So what do those energies do? They just at every moment draw you into Krishna. There's nothing in the way. It's only Krishna. You know, like in this world, there's Krishna's here, but everything else is in the way. Well, there it's the opposite. Krishna's there and nothing in the way, and everything taking you. It's like, all fast bullet trains are heading directly to Krishna. Get on board. That's just what it's like there. So meditate on this for a minute if you can, because I don't know if you've really grasped this idea ever before. I actually grasped this idea in a dream. I had a dream. This idea was totally intellectual to me. Maybe this sounds, I don't know, basic or whatever, but I had a dream that I was in the spiritual world. And I was just walking in the spiritual world, and I had an OMG moment. And my OMG moment was, there's no material energy here. There are no material thoughts in my head. There is no envy. There is nothing but Krishna, because that's all there is there. There's only spiritual energy. It just was like, for a second, I had this dream. I was walking in the spiritual world, and I was thinking, this is amazing. There's no material energy here. There's nothing getting in the way of my service to Krishna. It's only going towards Krishna. Sound good? And if you think about it, it makes so much sense, because here we're in the world where the modes of nature were set up to keep us away from Krishna, because that's what we wanted. So it's all working to keep us away from Krishna. And now we want to go towards Krishna, and we realize, wait a minute, I'm in the wrong place for this, because this world is going, it's going down, and I want to go up. And when you get to the spiritual world, it's just up. And that experience we have in Vrindavan, Mayapur, Puri, and like that, the Dham, it's all going up. It's not going, well, of course, you could still go down, but if you're in basically decent consciousness, you just naturally go up. So, wouldn't that be nice, don't you think? Like, it's all just going up. There's nothing to fight. All fast bullet trains going to Krishna. No trains going the other way. Meditate on that a little bit. I think it will inspire you. Mm. And there's no COVID. And there's no debates about equal rights and women's rights and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. Doesn't exist. They don't have those problems. They're not in material concept of life. They're not creating problems. They're not discriminating. You can't even say they're beyond it. It just doesn't exist. There's nothing to be beyond. It doesn't exist there. So meditate on that. It's a beautiful meditation. The more you meditate on it, because you realize it's not a situation where you're fighting to transcend anymore. There is nothing to transcend there. Everything is already transcendental. Isn't that where you want to be? I think so, right? Do you really want to be in a place where there's three modes of nature? Those modes were only created to keep us entangled here. Isn't that interesting? So now I'm going to look and see if you have anything to say. And it looks like we have some things that are being said. Okay, wow. So many things are being said. Okay. Oh, we've got Christe knows the words. Oh, wow, we're going to get John Lennon's full impersonalism. I'm waiting for confirmation from Reshma that she's listening to class during work and nobody knows. Guru is heavy. Krishna Karshani says, Guru is heavy in knowledge, not heavy in treating his disciples. The Guru lovingly treats his disciples. And sometimes it's heavy with love. It just may not look like it to the average observer. When Prabhupada was heavy, one devotee, he was actually shaking. Prabhupada was so angry. Wasn't angry at him. He was angry at another devotee. And after the devotee left, he said, Prabhupada, what should I think? It was so heavy. When the Guru chastises the disciple, what should the disciple think? And Prabhupada said, you should think he's giving you attention. Look at the Guru. There's billions of people, and the Guru is giving you attention, just like with a hammer on your head, but at least it's attention. And when the Guru gives you attention, it's only for your own good. Otherwise, he doesn't have any, axe to grind against his disciple. It's only for their own good. So, that was pretty heavy when Prabhupada called Krishna Das Maya Das. Could you imagine? Your Guru calls you Maya Das. And he's angry. It's not just joking. Yeah, so. But it's only love. Okay, we're getting the truth out of Reshma now. I'm totally a Maharaj. You know me well. At work listening to your beautiful class, yeah. A real devotee. Gopinath does that also. No hands, no legs also sounds like Lord Jagannath. Actually, Lord Jagannath has hands and legs. There are some, someday, KB, you will see those hands and legs. When Mahaprabhu saw Lord Jagannath, he actually saw Shyamsundar, Krishna, with a flute. That's who he saw. So we've got a ways to go. But there are deities that actually have, Jagannath deities that actually have feet. And those stumps, yeah, those are his arms. So the song I was thinking is, I am the rawit, I am the walrus. Check out these lyrics. This was like 67. It gives you an idea of what's going on in the mind of all the younger generation. I am he, as you are me, and we are all together. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah, that was the national anthem of the hippies. I mean, and this is John Lennon, who had Prabhupada's association. Prabhupada lived, I don't know, for weeks at his estate. and he had his association. And this is what he came up with. Kayla, you going to sing it for us? No, better not. We'll get contaminated. Isn't that interesting? He had Prabhupada's association. And that's what he came up with. Amazing. There's Hare Krishna in the song. Okay, that's good. Oh, so Hare Krishna came in it. That's good. I don't know what it means. It's like singing Hare Krishna. Sounds like he was on a lot of LSD when he wrote that song. I don't. Okay. Tanya says, sadhu's can be very heavy. Sometimes I get overwhelmed and scared when I listen to Srila Prabhupada. But when a true sadhu speaks the tough truth, somehow you just feel that underneath there's no false ego. And ulterior motivation and just compassion. Exactly. And the wish to get you out of meaningless suffering. This is a good point. I want to bring up a point here because Prabhupada said Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was 90% strict, and he was the lion guru, and he was really, really, really heavy against Mayavadis. So much so that if they ever saw him, they would actually run away because he would go after them if he saw them. Like, what? Hey, why are you worshiping Krishna? Why do you think you're, like just, they'd actually run away. So you have this image of this extremely strict and very heavy person. But when you read his life, you see he's, as a Vaishnava is compassionate, soft-hearted, and like that. You see in the personal dealings with his disciples, he's very soft-hearted, very kind, even if they're sometimes chastised. And those of us who had Prabhupada's association, we were fortunate enough to see that side of Prabhupada. The personal dealings, the compassion, the tolerance, etc., the kindness, his willingness to discuss things, to change his mind about something, to allow his disciples to do things which maybe he would have not wanted them to do, but they were doing the best they could. You see all this. So therefore, when you see all this, and then you hear the heavy thing, you don't think, oh, he's so heavy. Because he's not. He's just making a point that has to be made in a heavy way for our benefit. And so in the same way, sometimes Prabhupada makes statements which people think are racist, and I always say that Prabhupada never acted in any racist way whatsoever. Never made any decision to enact any program that was racist. Never dealt with anyone in a racist way. So that's where some people, they say, well, he said this. How do we understand that? And said, well, you have to start with the fact that he can't be racist because he's not seeing you as a body, and his only interest is that you go back to Godhead. And it's interesting, because there was a statement, maybe one or two statements, maybe three, that seemed racist against black people. And when Prabhupada went to Africa, and they were so many Indians were coming, and Prabhupada said, "No, we're here in Africa for the African people. That's who we should be helping. The Indian people, they'll come anyway. Reach out to the African people." So in his life, in his example, in his heart, and his consciousness, he was reaching out to everybody, everywhere in the world. He went to Russia. He sent Tamal Krishna Maharaj to China. And so, that's where his heart was. So that's what we have to understand about the sadhu. His heart is, he just wants to help people who are suffering. And sometimes he may make a remark, which is just an observation. Well, this is how this class of people are like this. It's a stereotype, obviously. It's not everybody. Women are like this, men are like that. It's a stereotype. black people like this, Chinese people like this, Russian people like this. We make jokes, stereotypes, Russian people, you know. Hey, Prabhu, what? You serve vodka at the Sunday feast, you know? So it's just a joke, but probably Russians drink more vodka than Americans, right? I would think. Maybe. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, they like their liquor. So, but it's not a judgment about Russian people, just like an observation that they do this more. So sometimes he would make comments like that in discussions about how to minister to people who have this nature, how we should deal with them. And so that people think, oh, he's prejudiced. A pure devotee can't be prejudiced. It's impossible. It's a contradiction. He makes statements which come from compassion that don't look like it, and then people get confused. So these things will be, I believe, explained further through the BBT publications at some time in the future. They'll explain these things so people can understand. This is why he said this. This is what was meant by it. This is how he lived. If you think, you know, a person who said this would do this, well, he never did that. There's not a lot. You draw the dots, and it doesn't come out that way. Anyway, that's another discussion. But it's important to understand that. So when this sadhu is heavy, then we understand where his heart is. Krishna question says, of course, the Guru chastises disciples to improve their character for his sadistic pleasure. She's joking. A bona fide Guru is like a loving parent teaches his child at the cost of scolding him to tears. It's an act of love. Srila, or is this Marco? Oh, it's Krishna question. Srila Prabhupada has apologized many times to disciples, failures for chastising them for his deep. No, it was his godbrothers he apologized to. And because he criticized his godbrothers in preaching. And a couple of things that happened. He told his son that he said to his son, he said, your mother was a very good wife, very good mother. He said, but I was not such a good husband. He admitted that. He asked specifically that money would be given to all the major temples in Vrindavan and forgiveness would be asked of the heads of that organization if any offense were made. And then when he met some of the leaders of that organization, a few of them, he said, I've made, excuse me, I made offenses. I became puffed up by my opulence, my success. And they said, no, you've made no offenses. But, Prabhupada sometimes said the godbrothers should have been doing this, but they made mistakes and they didn't do what they should do. So he was doing that for us, so we wouldn't make the same mistakes. And he then apologized. And in fact, I just heard a week or two ago a talk by a devotee whose job it was after Prabhupada left to go around Vrindavan and meet all the mahants, all the leaders of the temples, and give them a donation on behalf of Prabhupada and ask for forgiveness. And that's what he did. And he told his story. He said it was amazing. He said everyone was so kind and so generous and so warm and loving. There was no enmity at all. So, sometimes preaching is difficult. Sometimes you have to say things that even you yourself personally don't want to say, but it's just true. And it's necessary. It's necessary to say it. And the things that sometimes you want to say, you may realize they're not healthy. It's not going to be good for the person if I say that. They'll misunderstand. They'll take advantage of it. And so sometimes you just like, this one time, this devotee was misbehaving. And so I talked to him about it. And he kept misbehaving. And I said, if you do this again, cannot stay in the temple. I said, I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's it. You just can't. That solved the problem. That was heavy, you know. If you do this again, you can't stay. I don't want to see your face again, ever. That solved the problem. It's not my nature to do that, but I understood it seemed like the only thing that would work, and it did. So that's part of the austerity of preaching. Sometimes you have to be heavy for the benefit of people, but, sparingly heavy. You have to be careful. Prabhupada was not heavy always. When he knew a disciple couldn't take it, he wouldn't do it. I have that experience that some disciples cannot take anything other than love, affection, and compliments. And if I try to correct or get heavy, it just backfires. And one of my godbrothers said, my greatest anxiety as a guru is that certain disciples I can't help because I can't tell them what they need to hear because they can't hear it. So you can imagine the anxiety of a guru who sees his disciple walking off the end of the roof and ready to fall off because they're not watching where they're going, and he can't tell them because they'll get angry. So it's a tough job being a teacher. Okay. Krishna Karshani says, it seems that in present days, a cutting disciple attitude of the guru may not always work. Most of people are coming from dysfunctional families, and when the guru chastises them, they are devastated. Yeah. It seems that nowadays, guru has to make a pill of Krishna consciousness. Sweet pill, not discourage the disciple. Guru has not easy. Yeah. You just said what I said. Or I just said what you said. We both said the same thing. Yeah. Anyway, for those of you who are not initiated, well, Krishna Karshani, obviously I agree with what you said because that's what I just said. But some devotees have gurus that are heavy, like really, really strict. Like strict. And if you don't follow strictly, you will hear from them with strict words. And those devotees will say, and I'll say, your Guru Maharaj is like really heavy, isn't he? And they'll say, yeah, I need that. That's why I chose him, because I'm such a flab, couch potato, spineless, cordless, this and that. I need a guru who's smash, 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 smash. So some devotees really need that. They need a heavy guru. And I know one guru who is extremely heavy, and I think all his disciples will say that. It was so good for them because he just wouldn't tolerate nonsense. And if they did something that was displeasing to Prabhupada, their guru would let them know, and sometimes, in thunderbolt form, hurricane style. So, also depends on the disciple. And it's true, some disciples, who let's say if you have low self-esteem, it's really hard to be chastised. In fact, if you have low self-esteem, you get upset even when you're not chastised. You don't get upset from the negative, you get upset because you didn't get enough positive. So totally understand what you're saying. But at the same time, there are disciples I have disciples who asked me to chastise them. And I'm like, well, do something, for me to chastise you, because you haven't done anything. I don't want to just chastise you for nothing. So yeah, it depends. Raise your hand if you want to get chastised. Send me a letter if you want to get chastised. I'll write you a long letter, tell you what a fool you are. That's what you want. I feel the same way about Srila Prabhupada sometimes, totally overwhelming. Sometimes people ask me to recommend something by Prabhupada for them to read. I always have a moment. Whoa, are they ready for that? I always recommend, when asked, But I don't know if they don't read or just never follow up, but I never hear about it again. Many people aren't looking for hard truths. They want comfort, spirituality. Never mind that Krishna consciousness most, yeah, that's true. Well, Kaylee, you'll be happy to know. We're just in the final stages of designing a cover for my new book. And Nadine said she will lay it out at the end of April. And the end of April is fast approaching. So this was the book that we were all waiting for. The book to introduce people to Krishna consciousness without the hurricane. And here's a prediction. I'm just going to make it. And some people will chop my head off for predicting this. But I predict that more and more and more and more and more and more and more in the future of the Hare Krishna movement, which could be 50, 100, 200, 500, there'll be more and more and more and more and more and more and more books written by disciples of Prabhupada explaining what they learned from Prabhupada so that people can be, the soil in their hearts can be fertilized so that they can read Prabhupada's books, and they want to read Prabhupada's books. And that's actually happening now. You know, if you have a program which is bringing people to Krishna consciousness slowly, slowly, gradually, gradually, then at some point you can just go, here's all of Prabhupada's books. You should buy them all. And the people say, yeah, I want to read them all. So I think that's going to be maybe not the only way, but that's going to be a big way, a big wave of how Prabhupada's books are distributed in the future. By interesting people, bringing people into Krishna consciousness through other literature that we're more certain that they would read and understand very easily. That's just my gut feeling. I could be wrong. I like to say, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. No, I don't want to say that. I'll just say I could be wrong. But it seems logical to me, from my experience on book distribution and so forth, that we need lots of books written by devotees that contain excerpts from Prabhupada's books. You know, they're introduced to Prabhupada through those other books. So they're getting Prabhupada in a way that we say, okay, this is understandable. This will be clear, and we're explaining it. I think that's going to be more necessary as we see people having a more difficult time reading, and especially reading big books. And who knows in the future, you know, what is the future of books and print and how that's all going to work? Who knows? Maybe you just get a chip and it's like everything in the book you know. Instant Krishna consciousness. You know the whole Bhagavad Gita with one implant. Who knows? I won't be around, hopefully, to find out. Although that would be kind of cool to get an implant of the whole Veda base. So Claudia says, I have a doubt about if we have ever been in Goloka Vrindavan face to face with Krishna, or we came from Tatashta Shakti. What would that? We have never been in the spiritual world. Thank you. You are not the only one, Claudia, that has a doubt. And the answer is, let's get the envelope. And the answer is to your question, yes and no. That's the answer, Claudia. Which gives you an option of which answer you like. Why do I say yes and no? Because Srila Prabhupada said both. He said both. And I was thinking about this question, which I have pondered many, many long hours in my head, bouncing around. And, you know, it's like sometimes you're looking at a philosophical question and you get this like, okay, this seems to be what Prabhupada is saying. So you get it kind of clear philosophically, and then you think, but it doesn't make sense. Or you think, it doesn't feel right. You ever had that experience? Like, Okay, I understand it, but it just something's wrong here. It doesn't feel right. So what you're expressing, Claudia, is that like, wait a minute, like how could we be with Krishna and how could we turn our back at this? And like, makes sense. And like, we go back and like we'll take off where we left off, and all our friends are like, "Hey, where you been? I haven't seen you in like 10 zillion years." Of course, for them, it was just like, "Hey, where were you for the last second?" So we're trying to make sense of it. And then we get confused because Prabhupada says nobody falls from Vaikuntha. And then he said we were with Krishna and Leela. Well, it seems to be contradictory. And then you go to the writings of the other acharyas and say, our origin is Tatastha, the marginal. And like, and then your head starts spinning. And then after it spins a while, you say to yourself, I think I should just go to sleep. This is like too much to think about. And then you go on the internet and you read the article. Definitely, 100%, no question, we were with Krishna in the spiritual world. Click, click, definitely 100%, we were never with Krishna in the spiritual world. Quoting Prabhupada, Jiva Goswami, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Rupa Goswami. It's like, now you're really getting sleepy, or maybe it's time for gulab jamans. So, I was thinking about this. Glad you asked lately. And the reason I was thinking about it is because I was thinking about vaccines. And I think, what do vaccines have to do with whether we fell from the spiritual world or not? Should I end the program for you to think about that, and we'll come back Monday and I'll give you the answer? Okay, I'll give you a hint. It's Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel, right? So I began, because of this pro or anti-vaccine situation. We're going back and forth, and a lot of devotees are upset that the GBC has recommended vaccines. And they probably, if the GBC didn't recommend them, they would just be upset if somebody got a vaccine, but probably not so bad because people, wouldn't be going on the internet saying, this is why I did it, or promoting it, But aside from that, that's already happened. I was just looking at this and I'm thinking, there's so many things to talk about. And sometimes when people ask me questions like, what do you think about this? A lot of times what comes to me is that I think Prabhupada would want us to be thinking about how to spread Krishna consciousness more than thinking about this, whatever it is, where we fell from, or vax or no vax, or, there's so many issues that kind of have no conclusion, really. Or it doesn't really matter that much what the conclusion is, essentially. It's kind of like we say in America, this president's going to be better than that president, but when push comes to shove, your life doesn't change a whole lot over who's president, at least from my experience. There's some benefits sometimes. Economy is better, or some advantages here or there, but nothing dramatic, at least in America. Maybe in other countries it is more dramatic. So, you can debate over this one or that one and get very absorbed, fight over who's better. And in the long run, it's like, well, shouldn't I just put that energy into thinking how to spread Krishna consciousness? So that's what comes to mind when I discuss this. Because in the where we fell from category, there's lots and lots of arguments on both sides. In the vaccine category, there's lots and lots of arguments on both sides. In the Trump versus Biden debate, there are lots and lots of arguments, both sides. In the female Diksha Guru, should or shouldn't she? There are lots and lots of arguments on both sides. And when this debate was going on, female Diksha Guru, lots and lots of energy was put into it, people writing papers, discussing at conferences, meetings. And on a gut level, I just think, is this really what Prabhupada wants us to be doing? Shouldn't we really be putting our energy more into how to bring Krishna consciousness to others. So I know that doesn't exactly answer your question, maybe the way you wanted it, but I think it's a consideration. Like you have Claudia, you have enough evidence in Prabhupada's books and the writings of the Acharyas to come to either one of those conclusions, that you were with Krishna or you weren't. But there's a letter where Prabhupada said something which kind of, was informed my decision of, are we putting too much energy into these other things? Which was, Prabhupada said, whether you fell from Krishna Loka or some other place, he said, right now you're here. So just get out of here. So it's kind of like, did I fall from the first floor? Or you're on the ground, your back hurts. Did I fall from the first floor or was it the second? And everyone said, doesn't matter. Just go to the hospital. So that was kind of Prabhupada's mood. Some devotees think it matters because they think ISKCON is ignorant by saying we came from the spiritual world when other Gaudiya Math institutions say, no, we didn't. But it's hard for us to just say, completely deny that, because Prabhupada said it. Unless we interpolate what he said to mean that he didn't really say what he seems like he's saying. So that's why I said the answer is yes and no. Okay, Claudia, the answer is whatever you like. That's the answer. You can think anyway. And some devotees will just say for their own, like logical, intuitive, they'll say one makes more sense to them, one is more inspiring, it's more logical. Like I left Krishna and I'm going back and he's waiting, or another one, oh, it doesn't make sense. I couldn't have left him. But one thing for sure, any explanation you'll read, there is the concept of turning your back. Because if you originate in the middle, you're not in the spiritual world, you're not in the material world. That's the other explanation. You're originating in the middle, and then you're making a choice. Either you'll come into the mist world, or you go to the spiritual world. So you didn't fall from the spiritual world, you fall from tatastha, the middle position. But in either case, you made a decision to come here, whether it was from the 10th floor or the ground floor. You made a decision to jump this side. So that's the basic problem. We made a decision to turn our back on Krishna. So was I seeing him and did I turn my back? Or was I not seeing him but knowing I could turn towards him, and that's still going this way, I'm turning my back. So it's kind of like the same thing when it comes down to it. If you really look at it, I knew he's there waiting for me, but I never had a relationship with him, and I turned my back. Or I had a relationship with him, and I turned my back. The second one doesn't sound as horrible as the first one. Like, how could you turn your back on him? Second one, how can I turn my back on him? Well, I don't know him. I don't know. I haven't met him yet. So, and there's a few other theories in between. So the question is, how much time do you want to give to that? And if we give too much energy to that, we could have been putting energy into figuring out how to make more people Krishna conscious. So you have my permission to think any way you want, because there's evidence for both. Generally, in ISKCON, you don't want to sit there on the Vyasa Ashana, on the Sunday feast and say we fell from Brahman, because you might get your speaker's permit revoked. But we're just having a discussion now. We're not coming to any conclusions. But generally, ISKCON, in its official capacity, will say that we've come from Krishna Loka, because that's predominantly what Prabhupada said, or he seems to be pretty explicit about it, at least in many cases. So that's the standard. I think ISKCON will evolve and say, this is what it appears that Prabhupada said, but he did say other things, and other acharyas have said other things. That seems to be the more balanced explanation. And, It's like one of those things. You're going to believe what you're going to believe, even if there's evidence to the contrary. So, I've read things which Bhaktisiddhanta said, seems like he's saying we've come from Brahman. But other people say, no, that's not what he's saying. All right, who's right? Did I read it wrong? It said we fell from Brahman. Does he mean something else? Prabhupada said we were with Krishna. Did he mean something else? This is, I think we have to be prepared that being part of a religious movement, that this is kind of like what we're going to be dealing with, controversy, because the nature of spiritual world is it's unlimited. So the controversy can kind of like take all kinds of amazing dimensions. I think it's healthy to discuss these things. I think the biggest problem that could come from these discussions is to end up disliking the people who don't agree with us. That's where the problem comes. How could you say we come from the spiritual world? It's right there. Jiva Goswami said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and it's like, blah, 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 blah. What's wrong? You don't have a brain. You're all neophytes. You should be smart like me. So sometimes that's where the discussions go. And then they just degrade into tamagun. So discussion, philosophical discussion, looking at it from all sides, and is healthy. And I feel strongly, which maybe is perhaps the most important point I can make, I feel strongly that we need to become more philosophically astute. So my answer to you, Claudia, is read it all and make your own decision, rather than me tell you. I think that's a healthier paradigm for our movement, because it's not so black and white. It isn't. And so we can say, if we say, this is what Prabhupada said, this is what the other acharyas said, generally devotees in ISKCON, we are inclined to see it this way, but here's all the evidence. You can understand it, read it, and whether you believe one or the other, it's not going to be a problem. You'll still get your ticket back to Godhead, but I think it's healthy for us to discuss these things and look at these things and not just, kind of say, you have to think this way about an issue which is not exactly one-sided. So that's my inclination. Discuss intelligently and use your intelligence, and maybe 10 years from now you'll change your mind. That's okay. It's not a make it or break it philosophical point, because that was Prabhupada. It was interesting because Prabhupada said, whether you've come from Krishna Loka or somewhere else, he's kind of saying, he's not saying you did come from Krishna Loka, because they're saying it seems like we didn't. So he's kind of going along with the argument. He says, okay, if that's what you say, okay, but it doesn't matter, because right now you're not in Krishna Loka and you're not in Brahman, you're stuck here. So let's get out of here. That was his conclusion. So he seemed to be like, okay, whatever. Also, it wasn't like, this is going to make it or break it, and if you don't get this right, you're not going back to Godhead. It was not the way he explained it. John Lennon's next destination. Maybe he's in the movement now. I think Gopi Jivana is an incarnation of John Lennon. We need to, you ever see Gopi Jivana's picture? And he plays guitar also. So we have to figure out John Lennon's the date he died and the day Gopi Jivana was born to make sure to see. He met Prabhupada, he served. That much service, I would think he's either a devotee or doing service somehow or other, because that was huge, right? Unless he offended Prabhupada, I don't know. But, he had the opportunity to serve Prabhupada. That's like great fortune for him, right? Right? Sardia says, one younger devotee I work with is often heavy with me and chastises me. What they say is always useful, as they tell me, prioritize my chanting and reading. Yeah. So I try to take it as Krishna's mercy and thank them for it. That's good. However, I sometimes wonder if I should tell them to be careful about correcting devotees who are older than they are, as some devotees may take offense if a person who is younger. Yeah, that's true. That's our etiquette. You don't really correct the elders. What do you think? Yeah. If the elders want to be corrected, yeah. If not, don't. Or you can go up to them. Prabhu, can I correct you? This is a tough one because it depends what the elder's doing. You know, if they're really doing something that needs to be corrected. Generally, you would tell somebody else who they respect, who's maybe elder to them, and say, could you talk to him about this? And that's generally what you would try to do as a first course of action. As you said, Guru Maharaj, get initiated when you're ready to be helped. Yeah. Some people write me and say, I want to be a disciple. I go, are you sure? Like, you sure? You want to do what someone else tells you? You're like, really? You want to do that? Of course, I'm joking, but I see that, when you become a disciple, it's not always easy. Chairati says, what is the best way to help a disciple like that? One who cannot handle criticism. Don't criticize. I think sometimes there's nothing you can do because they're too sensitive. And it just makes it worse. It's better just to let them, do what they do. Unless what they're doing is disturbing others, then, we have to talk to them. But if it's just like, can you tell so-and-so to do this? No, I can't. They'll get upset. Like, okay, doesn't matter. If it matters, we have to take that gamble. But it's unfortunate, to become a disciple, but not be able to take instruction. That's unfortunate. It's kind of a paradox, isn't it? I want to be your disciple. Do you want to follow my instruction? Not really. But I want to go back to Godhead, and I heard you need a guru to go back to Godhead. So sometimes that's there also. You're supposed to have a guru. But actually follow the guru, that's part of it. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. Of course, you got to have many gurus, many Siksha gurus. And, but sometimes your guru knows exactly what you need to hear or knows exactly that you're doing the wrong thing and it's something you're attached to. And he tells you, and you get upset with him for telling you that. That's dangerous. So that's worse. In a sense, it's worse. Better not have a guru if you're going to get upset with your guru for giving you instruction. Prabhupada said some things sometimes that I just I had a really hard time with. And all I could think is, who am I? I'm just a fool. What do I know? And I didn't understand what he said or why he said it. It just didn't, there was nowhere in my brain that it fit. And I would just say, I'll understand someday. I don't understand now. But I can't reject the message. I can't reject the messenger because I don't like the message. So it's a little, not always easy to be a disciple. You say, it must have been so easy for you to be disciples of Prabhupada. Yeah, of course. But he did say some things which are like, whoa, oh, really? And okay, I have to accept that. But that's there's nowhere in my brain for that statement. There's no compartment in my head that statement fits into. It's part of the challenge of being a disciple. Okay, I'm waiting for all the letters requesting chastisement. I'll write a form letter. This, dear so-and-so, this is a form letter chastisement. Jyotimaya says, her Guru Maharaj chastised her once in front of all the temple during class. I wanted to hide under the pavement. Yeah. Usually, the spiritual master usually will chastise someone who can take it. I have made the mistake of chastising a few devotees who can't take it, who really needed to hear the chastisement, and they weren't meant to be disciples because they couldn't take instruction. So that's a sign of who's ready or not ready to be a disciple. If you can't take instruction, what's the purpose of being a disciple? Then you need to work on that yourself. Like, what's going on that you can't take instruction, that you're so sensitive? A lot of times it's just you feel like, your whole sense of self is being destroyed, and your guru is supposed to love you, and he just destroys you. But you don't see it as love. And then you just take it as him being mean or something, or unfair. So it's sensitive. Krishna Karshani says, I am the most sweet guru ever, melting hearts of your disciples with your love. Sometimes I chastise her also. Understanding and support, yeah. But I've given her a few chastisements. Well deserved. But generally what you say is correct. I guess that was just a chastisement now also. I haven't chastised you in a long time. Of course, I haven't seen you in a long time. When I come back, yeah. I personally do not like to chastise. I like to encourage, I like to make devotees happy, I like to make devotees feel good about their service, about themselves, and so forth. But sometimes you need to, but having seen the negative consequences of doing that, I'm quite careful. I mean, I've seen several negative consequences of devotees who it destroyed their Krishna consciousness when they got corrected. Yeah. Sardiya says, your Guru Maharaj chastises me every time he sees me. He once told me when I was 25, and I asked him if I should do postgraduate studies, that if I started at that time, I would be studying till I'm 40, as I'm always slow to get things done. I was super offended. I'm now 34 doing my master's. At the rate I will finish PhD at 38. He was right. But some of you just like school. So you might stay in school the rest of your life, right? Claudia says, I heard from Ridananda Goswami, Tatasta is a category, not a place. As long as we remain conditioned by material nature, we remain in a certain category. Nitya Buddha, when we regain our original position as loving servants, Krishna and Fulgurant, we are eternally liberated state. It is not that we remain eternally conditioned, while others are eternally liberated. It depends on our choice. Obviously, on our limited. Yeah, the discussion of the Tatasta is where that soul originates. So some say originates in the spiritual world, some say originates with Mahavishnu. So in that sense, Mahavishnu in the causal ocean on the borders of the material world. Oh, that was Marco saying that, yeah. So I've also heard both things, that some devotees talk of Tatasta as a location, but it could be more of a theoretical location. Like Prabhupada gives the example, the sand and the ocean, and in between that spot is Tatasta. It's like, so it may be semantics, but that the argument is whether he originates either from Brahman or Mahavishnu or Vaikuntha. Anyway, if you're going to stay up late at night pondering, it's probably better to ponder that than something else mundane. Tanya says, it's somehow like we need a seed of love for Prabhupada planted in our hearts by his devotees in order to understand him. I think I wouldn't be here if I hadn't stumbled upon the mentors. Memoirs of Jamuna Devi, yeah. These things really help. Yeah, this is such an important point, and seeing this more and more, that to understand Prabhupada's teachings, you really need to understand him, because it can be confusing. Because we're representing a tradition, and the tradition has a lot of ancient roots, which are not, the practices are not always applicable or applicable in the way they were. And so by hearing the philosophy, it often sounds like it's meant to be practiced as it was practiced in Satya Yuga, for example, when situations were different shastras predominated then. And we're also doing bhakti, so we're concerned not so much about rules and regulations and varnashram and social context. We're concerned about devotion, primarily. So in seeing Prabhupada in his intimate life, in his exchanges with his devotees, then you can better understand these things and say, well, he said this, but he never did that in his dealings. He never said this about these people, but he never treated them as you would think a person would treat them who said that. So I think that's extremely important. And one devotee made an interesting point. He said that the conservative element is more concerned with the teaching, and the liberal element is more concerned with the example. So when you're having a discussion, the liberal element is, their context is what Prabhupada did. The conservative element is what he said. Now that's sometimes why you get into conflict, which is I think a really interesting point and an important point to understand if there's conflict. So why is there conflict here? Oh, because they're focused more on what Prabhupada said, and we're focused more on what Prabhupada did. So both are important. And then you can understand the conflict. Well, he said this is how it is. Yeah, but he didn't do that. But still, that's the Shastra, that's what he said. I know, but this is how he applied it. Well, that was then, and you only have the Shastra now. So they're like going back and forth. And obviously you need both. Saradi is going to say something about the vaccine, which I think should have been said before all those articles came out. No one who's against the vaccine will get it because GBC said devotees should. Not sure devotees have much interest in GBC directives for their private lives. Yeah. We talked about the history of why the GBC said this. Okay, I'll just say a few words. This is funny. Vaccine or not, does the conclusion matter? Okay, I'll write that down. But see, after I write it down, Jayashree, I have to remember what I said. So you have to send me a paragraph of explanation in an email of what I just said, because I have this incredible shakti to forget what I said, because it's all in the moment about something. So, it is a fact that if you take a poll of the entire population, the devotee community will have a stronger tendency to believe in conspiracy theory than your average person. Yes or yes? And there are lots of conspiracies out there connected with the vaccine. Some may be more true than others. Some may be completely crazy. Like there's chips in the vaccine and Bill Gates is going to steal your credit card or, whatever. I don't know. I got better things to think about than this. So there was a concern that not everyone, especially the leaders, were aware of what was going on. And so from the perspective that the GBC was looking at it, of course, you may disagree with that perspective. And I'm not saying their perspective is right or wrong. I'm just saying that was their concern, that there wasn't information, enough information. And of course, the argument is, you only gave one point of view, so that's not fair. Anyway, I think what Sardiya Rasa says is perfectly correct. you're going to do whatever you do when the GBC is not really controlling devotees' lives. And that begs the question, should the GBC even be saying these things? They felt they should. They felt it was their duty. For better or for worse. I don't know. You know, I'm not going on Sankirtan. Why not? Because I want to argue about the vaccine. So that's the problem. Yeah. Mm. Mhm. Okay, she's gonna, Sardi Rasa is gonna find out the date John Lennon died and the date Gopi Jivana was born so that we can prove. He died December 8th, 1980. Oh, can't be Gopi Jivana because Gopi Jivana is not that old yet. That means someone is like 41 then, right? 40, 41, okay. All devotees in the age of 40 or 41, send me a picture and your email and let me know if you're a songwriter or not. And then we'll decide. Then we'll be able to see. Gopi Jivana wears similar sunglasses. Yeah. Well, of course, maybe John Lennon he could have been died at 20 in his next life and now come back. Yeah, but he looks like him. John Lennon saw the devotees in the hospital before he died. Wow, amazing. I read when he was dying, a devotee couple also was there in the hospital for their kid and they greeted him. Wow, amazing. Wow, fortunate. Sometimes the bays can be good and interesting. Yeah, definitely. If we follow Vaishnava etiquette and we're not out to destroy somebody, yeah. Prabhupada's inconceivable mercy because John Lennon did service for ISKCON by hosting devotees. Yeah, that's true. Got to see devotees in the end. Wherever you chastise me, I deserve for that 108%. I cannot wait. You come to Poland again and chastise me. Not that I'm going to do some nonsense to give you reason. Yeah, you will. You don't have to. Hare Krishna. Okay, it's time to go. We'll see you all for japa if you're coming. Hare Krishna to everyone. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol.